Once upon a time, in a peaceful and beautiful forest that was full of chirping birds and buzzing insects, there lived a big family of happy and friendly animals. They all lived together in peace and harmony, and they loved to spend their days playing fun games and telling each other stories. In this big family of animals, there were all kinds of different species living together. There were some big and strong animals, such as the lion and the elephant, but also smaller and weaker ones, such as the mice and the rabbits. Even though they were all different, they were all good friends, and they all got along very well. One of the animals that lived in this forest was a hare. Now, this hare was a very energetic and lively creature. He spent his days darting around the forest, leaping over logs and bushes, and racing through the trees. He loved to show off how fast and agile he was, and he would often boast to the other animals about his amazing speed. "There's no one in this forest who can run as fast as I can," he would say proudly. "I am the fastest of them all." The other animals would usually just laugh at his boasts and ignore him, but sometimes they would get annoyed by his constant bragging. One day, the hare was showing off his speed to a group of young rabbits when an old and wise tortoise approached them. The tortoise had been watching the hare with a knowing look on his face, and he finally spoke up. "Hare, speed is not everything in life. There are other qualities that are just as important, if not more so." The hare stopped his boasting and turned to the tortoise with a mocking smile. "Oh, really? And what qualities would those be, old man?" he asked, clearly not interested in what the tortoise had to say. "Patience, humility, and determination, to name a few," the tortoise replied calmly. "And I'll show you what those qualities can do." The hare laughed loudly, thinking that the tortoise was joking. "Are you serious? You want to race me? That would be the most ridiculous thing I've ever heard of," he said, barely containing his laughter. But the tortoise was not deterred by the hare's mockery. "Very well, then let it be a race between us," he said firmly. "We'll start at the old oak tree over there, and the first one to reach the river bank wins." The hare couldn't believe what he was hearing. He thought that the tortoise was out of his mind. "You sure you want to do this, old man? You might regret it," he said, a smug grin spreading across his face. The other animals that were gathered around listening to their conversation couldn't believe what they were hearing either. They all knew that the hare was the fastest animal in the forest, and that the tortoise was the slowest. It seemed like an impossible challenge for the tortoise to beat the hare in a race. "This is crazy," a squirrel said to a bird, shaking his head in disbelief. "There's no way that the tortoise can win," a rabbit said to a fox, his voice filled with pity for the poor tortoise. "It's going to be a landslide victory for the hare," an owl said to a deer, his eyes gleaming with amusement. But the tortoise was not worried about what the others thought of him. He knew that he was capable of doing anything he set his mind to, and he was determined to win the race. So without another word, he and the hare took their positions at the starting line under the old oak tree. The other animals gathered around to watch the race, and the hare shot off like an arrow as soon as the starting signal was given. He was so fast that the tortoise was just a blur in his rearview mirror. As the hare raced down the path, he could hear the cheers of the spectators echoing behind him. "Go! Go! Go! Hare, go!" they shouted. "Faster, faster, faster," he could hear them say. But the hare wasn't listening to them. He was only focused on one thing: winning the race. He ran so hard that he didn't notice how far ahead he had gotten. He didn't even realize that the riverbank was just a few steps away. Meanwhile, the tortoise was making his way down the path at his usual slow pace. He didn't care about the jeers and laughter of the spectators. He knew that he was in it to win it, and he was not going to let anything stand in his way. As he inched closer and closer to the finish line, he could hear the cheers of the spectators growing louder and louder. They were cheering for the hare, of course, because they knew he was going to win. But the tortoise didn't let that bother him. He kept his eyes on the prize and his feet moving forward. When the hare realized that he had reached the finish line, he slowed down and turned around to see where the tortoise was. But what he saw made him freeze in his tracks. The tortoise was almost there. He was just a few steps away from the finish line. The hare couldn't believe his eyes. He had never seen the tortoise move so fast. As the tortoise crossed the finish line, the cheers of the spectators grew even louder. They were cheering for him now, because he had proven that slow and steady wins the race. The hare was stunned. He couldn't believe that he had lost. He had been the fastest runner in the forest his whole life, and now a slow and steady tortoise had beaten him. He felt humiliated and ashamed. The other animals surrounded the tortoise, congratulating him on his victory. "Well done, old man," the fox said to the tortoise, his voice filled with admiration. "You showed us all what it means to be patient and determined." "Indeed," the owl said, "you proved that it's not always the fastest or the strongest who wins, but the one who never gives up." The deer nodded in agreement. "You are a true inspiration to us all, Tortoise," he said. The tortoise smiled at their compliments, but he didn't let it go to his head. He knew that he had only won because he had stayed focused and never given up. He didn't let the hare's boasts or the other animals' doubts get to him. He just kept moving forward, one step at a time. As for the hare, he was so ashamed for boasting and being arrogant that he apologized to the tortoise. "I'm sorry I made fun of you, Tortoise," he said. "I never thought that you could beat me in a race, but you showed me that I was wrong." The tortoise forgave him and told him that it was all in the past now. "What matters is that you learned something from this experience," he said. "Remember, Hare, it's not always about being the fastest or the strongest. Sometimes it's about being patient, humble, and never giving up." The hare nodded, understanding what the tortoise was saying. He realized that he had much to learn from the humble and wise creature. From that day on, the hare and the tortoise became good friends. The hare learned to be humble, and the tortoise learned to appreciate the joy of running fast. They continued to live in the forest, sharing their wisdom and friendship with all the other animals. And that, my dear listeners, is the story of how the tortoise outran the hare and won the race. Remember, no matter how slow you are, as long as you are consistent and persistent, you can achieve anything you set your mind to.